They told me I wasn't needed in the family meeting that morning. Just stay in your room, my mother said. It's adults' business. Adults' business, those were her words. The same adults who used my college fund to pay for my brother's engagement party. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, clutching my old journal like it was the last piece of proof that I existed in this house. Outside, the ceiling fan hummed lazily, and somewhere in the bathroom, a droplet of water kept falling. Drip, drip, drip. Each sound felt like a countdown. I didn't know to what, but it felt final. I tried to focus on my textbook, pretending the ache in my chest was just hunger, not heartbreak. But when I heard my name whispered downstairs followed by laughter, I couldn't stop myself. I crept halfway down the stairs, just enough to see them. My father was seated at the head of the table. His favorite porcelain cup filled with tea he never let me pour because I always didn't know the right amount of sugar. My mother sat beside him, adjusting her gold bangles as if every movement needed to shine. My brother, Rayan, was scrolling through his phone, smirking, and then I saw the envelope on the table, my university fee slip, the one I'd been begging them to submit for weeks. Father tapped it twice with his finger and said, "We've decided. That money will help Rayan start his new business." The room went quiet. My mother nodded without even looking up. That was it. My dream was signed away into sentences. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, but deep, like glass under pressure. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just watched, frozen, while they moved on to discuss Rayan's marketing plans and the color of his new office furniture. I wanted to run. Instead, I went back to my room, opened my journal, and wrote a single line. Today they erase me, but I will make them remember. I didn't know what I meant by that yet. But when the first tear fell on the page, it smudged the ink, leaving behind a dark, uneven stain like a wound refusing to dry. Outside, the dripping sound grew louder. Or maybe it was just my heartbeat. That was the day I stopped being their daughter. And the day I unknowingly began to become their downfall. I didn't know it then, but the very journal I was writing in would one day destroy every single one of them. In my house, love had a hierarchy, and I was always at the bottom. That's how it had always been. Even as a child, I knew my place wasn't in the center of affection, but somewhere in the shadows beside it. My sister, Zara, was the golden one, bright laughter, soft curls, the girl everyone wanted to protect. I was the other one, the quiet achiever no one noticed unless they needed something done. I still remember being 8, holding up my report card in front of my father. "I got first position again," I'd said, voice trembling with hope. He didn't even look up from the newspaper. "Good, help your mother with the dishes, that's all." No smile, no pride, just duty disguised as acknowledgement. Zara would walk in minutes later, humming some tune, and he'd light up like someone had turned the world back on. "There's my princess," he'd say, while I stood behind the kitchen door pretending I wasn't listening. That memory still stings more than the shouting that came later in life. Drip, 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 that sound again. The same leaky tap from my childhood bathroom. Sometimes I think it's been dripping my whole life, reminder that even silence can wound you. Mom was no different. Her love followed my father's lead like a shadow obeying light. If he ignored me, she'd too. If he praised Zara, she'd double it. And when I tried to ask why things were different, she'd say, "Don't compare yourself, Beta. Everyone has their own destiny." I stopped asking when I realized destiny meant don't expect fairness. By the time I was 16, I'd become a ghost who smiled politely. I knew how to vanish during fights, how to speak softly enough not to annoy anyone, and how to swallow pride until it turned into something bitter sitting in my throat. I can still see that one dinner night, the table heavy with food I'd cooked for Zara's birthday. She got perfume, gold earrings, and a car key-shaped cake. I got told I looked tired. Rayan, my brother, leaned across the table and whispered with that crooked smirk of his, "You should be grateful they even let you sit here." I didn't reply. I just stared at my plate until the rice blurred. My hand trembled, but I forced a smile because anger wasn't allowed in this house. Only silence. That morning's betrayal when they stole my university money, it felt different. It wasn't just another disappointment. It was confirmation. Years of being invisible condensed into one cruel decision. As I sat there with my journal open, I finally asked myself something I'd never dared before. If they've erased me this completely, what do I owe them anymore? The dripping sound echoed through the room, steady and slow. It almost sounded like an answer. For the first time, I closed my journal not out of defeat, but to plan what would come next. If perfection had a face, it would wear my sister's jewelry. Growing up, I learned to live in her shadow. My sister, Layla, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. When she walked into a room, everyone turned to admire her. When I did, they asked me to fetch something. Even my parents glowed around her. Every compliment she received was like another reminder that I was invisible, a ghost in my own house. I told myself I didn't mind, that being unnoticed gave me freedom. But that lie cracked the day I found out where my college savings had gone. Wait, what do you mean Dad used my account? I asked Mom, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She didn't meet my eyes. It was for Layla's birthday party, sweetie. You know how special this one is, her engagement announcement. I laughed, but it sounded like something breaking. So, my future didn't matter as long as her cake had gold frosting. Don't be dramatic, she snapped, finally looking up. You'll manage somehow. Layla appeared in the doorway, her perfect hair bouncing, the light from her diamond earrings reflecting across the room. Don't make this about money, she said softly, smiling like she was comforting a child. Dad said he'd help you later. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I said was, later never comes in this house, does it? The room smelled like her perfume, something expensive and floral, the kind that lingers long after she's gone. My hands trembled as I traced the faded edge of the bank slip, the proof of betrayal printed in neat black ink. Outside, the wind rattled the window pane like it was echoing my anger. My reflection in the glass looked pale, smaller somehow, like the house itself had swallowed me whole. In the background, the house buzzed with excitement, decorators setting up balloons, music samples blaring from Layla's playlist. And I stood there, silent, holding the wreckage of my plans. While they celebrated her future, mine had been sold off for a night of lights and laughter. A part of me whispered that confronting them would only make me the villain again. But another part, the one that had stayed quiet for too long, began to wake. If they could take everything I'd worked for without flinching, maybe it was time they learned what silence could do when it turned into strategy. That night, while their laughter filled the house, I sat alone in the dark and smiled for the first time in years because for once, I wasn't planning to forgive them. The form deadline was 5 p.m. and the clock was already mocking me. Every tick felt louder than the last, echoing through my skull like a countdown to humiliation. I clutched the empty envelope where my exam fees should have been and ran down the dusty street, my shoes scraping against gravel. The sun had started sinking, bleeding orange light through the haze, as if even the sky pitied me. My father's words replayed in my head. We'll talk later. It's your sister's day today. Later. Always later. But this time, later meant losing everything I'd worked for. I wasn't running just for a form. I was running for my future. Please, just this once, I begged my neighbor, Mrs. Islam, gripping the gate. I'll return it after the exam. She hesitated, wringing her hands. Beta, I wish I could help, but we just paid the bills. Her voice trailed off like she was afraid of catching my misfortune. At school, I cornered my teacher, Mr. Imran. Sir, the deadline, could they extend it? Just one more day? He sighed, eyes darting toward the staff room. Rules are rules. I can't bend them for anyone. Not even for someone who topped every exam last year? I asked, the bitterness seeping out before I could stop it. He looked away. I'm sorry. You're talented, but talent doesn't pay fees. The air smelled of heat and dust, mixing with the faint sweetness of fried snacks from a nearby stall. Somewhere a radio played an upbeat song about dreams, mocking me with every lyric. My throat burned from running, from begging, from pretending I still had a chance. The exam board's iron gate loomed ahead, black, tall, final. Behind it, I could see the clerk locking the door, his keys jingling like a cruel clock. I wanted to scream his name, to tell him my father stole my education for flowers and food trays. But what would that change? Pity wasn't a refund. Justice wasn't a form I could submit. All I could do was stand there frozen, breathless as the gate clicked shut and sealed my fate. Inside my pocket, my sister's bracelet brushed against my fingers, the one she'd accidentally left on my desk after showing off her new diamond set. It glittered faintly under the dying sunlight, mocking me like everything else. For a split second, I thought about selling it, using it to buy back my future. But that would make me no different from them, wouldn't it? Or maybe it would make me stronger. Come back tomorrow, the guard said, barely glancing at me. I can't. The form closes today, I whispered. He shrugged. Then you should have come earlier. The words sliced deeper than he could know. I had come earlier, years earlier, every time I tried to earn their approval, every time I chose silence instead of rebellion. But silence had expired too. He turned his back, whistling, while I stood outside the gate. My knees trembled, not from exhaustion but from realization. My father's laughter from this morning echoed in my head, the clinking of glasses, the smell of roasted meat from Layla's engagement feast, all of it blending into one suffocating memory. The sound of the closing gate was louder than any applause they gave her that night. Something inside me went still, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from peace but from the death of hope. I stared at the locked gate one last time, then turned around and walked home. But with every step, the quiet inside me began to change shape. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was planning. It was focus. As I walked home in the dark, something inside me quietly snapped, and this time, it wasn't going to heal. The smell of biryani made me sick because it was bought with my stolen future. They laughed like nothing had happened. My brother's fiancé sparkled under the chandelier light, flaunting the diamond ring my father said he could barely afford, the same man who told me days ago that there was no budget for my business tuition. Every laugh, every cheer at that table felt like a nail hammered into the coffin of what could have been my life. My plate sat untouched. The rice glistened with oil, but all I could taste was betrayal. My mother kept glancing at me, her eyes darting away the second mine met hers. She knew, of course she knew. Her silence was her loyalty to him, not me. My father raised his glass. To family unity, he said, grinning like he'd just won an award for Best Father of the Year. My brother smirked. And to new beginnings. I almost laughed. The irony was choking. I could hear the faint hum of the ceiling fan above, the clinking of spoons against glass bowls, the soft rustle of expensive silk cerise. I felt completely detached, as if I was watching from outside my own body. My aunt leaned in. "You're awfully quiet tonight, Beta," she said sweetly to sweetly. I forced a smile. "Just not hungry." She frowned. "You should eat. Your father worked so hard to make this evening special." Special. That word felt poisonous. Inside, my thoughts screamed. Worked hard? He worked hard to erase me from his picture-perfect family portrait. I caught my brother's glance across the table. The smirk again. A little too confident. A little too familiar. It wasn't just arrogance, it was satisfaction. He knew he'd won. My mother spoke softly. "You'll get your turn, sweetheart. Everyone's journey is different." I stared at her. "Is that what you tell yourself every night, Mom? That betrayal is just a different journey?" Her spoon froze midair. A few heads turned. My father's smile faltered for a heartbeat before returning. "More force this time," he said through gritted teeth. Enough drama at the table. But I wasn't performing anymore. I was finally seeing clearly. I noticed the empty chair beside me, the one that used to be mine during family decisions. It wasn't even set tonight. Maybe they thought I wouldn't notice. Maybe they hoped I'd just fade out quietly. The room buzzed again, pretending nothing happened. I sat back, silent, memorizing every expression, every careless laugh. The way my brother's fiancé reached across to feed him a spoonful of dessert, the way my father proudly watched, and the way my mother kept pretending to smile. They thought this was their moment of victory. But I knew better. This was my moment of clarity. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, the biryani smell still clinging to my clothes, my stomach twisting. I opened my old journal, the one I hadn't touched in years. Its pages smelled faintly of ink and regret. I wrote one line slowly, deliberately. "One day, they'll regret this." I underlined it twice. The pen dug deep into the paper, almost tearing through it. My hand trembled, but not from sadness anymore. It was something colder, sharper. I closed the journal and whispered to the darkness. "They just declared a war they don't even know exists yet." This wasn't the first theft, just the one I finally noticed. I sit alone in my room. The faint hum of the ceiling fan mixing with the distant clatter of dishes downstairs. My fingers trace the edges of my journal as memories crawl up from the corners of my mind, stubborn and sharp. It starts small at first, the time I was blamed for breaking Dad's favorite watch, even though I'd been at a friend's house. I remember the sting, the way his eyes narrowed, how he spoke like I was a thief even then. At the time, I swallowed my anger, believing it was just one of those unfair moments. Then the scholarship, that $5,000 that could have paid for my summer course, vanished, siphoned away by my father with a casual, "I'll just borrow it for a few months." Months turned into years. and I was left watching opportunities evaporate. Mom's words echo in my head, her sharp tone lacing every memory. You're too emotional. You can't handle responsibility. Too emotional. Too sensitive. Too much. And suddenly, the pattern is undeniable. Every minor injustice, every whisper of favoritism toward my siblings, every promise that ended in betrayal, it all adds up. I wasn't just ignored. I was systematically erased from the plan they built around themselves. I replay the voices in my head, the real ones, and imagine confrontations. Why do you always ruin everything? Mom had hissed during a dinner when I questioned her decision to cancel my music class. Her forced smile didn't reach her eyes. Don't make me laugh, Dad had said once, rifling through my drawers, pretending to look for his pen but clearly judging me. You think you deserve more than your share? Even my siblings had their part. Relax, you're overthinking again, my sister mocked, her laughter sharp like glass. We know better than you. Each word, each tone, layered with subtle superiority, a reminder that I was expendable. The air feels heavy, thick with the smell of old wood and faint perfume lingering from the hall downstairs. A sunbeam catches the edge of my journal, illuminating scribbles of frustration and anger I had written but never sent. The fan whirs above, a monotonous, mocking rhythm that makes the silence of my own thoughts unbearable. Shadows stretch along the walls, long and accusatory, as if the house itself knows what they've done. Every creak of the floorboard downstairs sounds like a reminder of their laughter, their control, their audacity. I run my fingers over the bracelet on my wrist, the one Mom gave me when I was 10, claiming it was special. At the time, it was sentimental. Now, it feels like a symbol of false trust, a reminder of everything they've taken from me without consequence. Each memory makes my chest tighten, my mind spinning in a storm of anger, confusion, and planning. I realize that all those small injustices weren't isolated. They were a rehearsal for this moment of awakening. I close my eyes and whisper into the darkness of my room. What else have they stolen from me? I wasn't supposed to find the envelope or the letter beside it. I bend over the cluttered drawer in Mom's study, a mundane chore turned accidental revelation. My fingers graze a thin, dust-covered envelope tucked beneath old bills and grocery lists. Something about its weight and secrecy immediately pulls me in. I hesitate, heart hammering, mind swirling. Why hide a letter? The envelope isn't addressed to me, but the neat handwriting on the corner, my name, makes my chest tighten. As I slide it out, another paper flutters underneath, an old acceptance letter from my school, offering me a partial scholarship years ago. My eyes narrow as realization dawns. Years of struggling financially, of being pushed aside, while the chance to attend a program that could have changed everything lay unopened, hidden by the very people who were supposed to champion me. My hands shake, the letter crinkling in my grip. I wanted to scream, but my mind froze. Did they ever want me to succeed, or was this just another way to control me? The anger mixes with disbelief, and memories swirl like a storm. Every borrowed scholarship fund, every dismissed achievement, every sly dismissal of my dreams, it all ties together. This isn't just negligence, it's intentional sabotage. I feel my chest tighten, the air thick, as if the room itself conspires to keep me silent. Every clink of Mom's cleaning supplies in the background echoes like a mocking laugh. I mutter under my breath, mostly to myself, testing the words. They never wanted me to get this? My voice trembles with a mix of rage and hurt. A creak in the hallway makes me freeze. Footsteps, distant but deliberate. Mom calls from the kitchen, her tone light, overly cheerful. Careful with the drawers, dear. Don't make a mess. The forced sweetness gnaws at me. It's practiced, manipulative, hiding her guilt behind routine words. I bite my lip, whispering, all this time, everything I struggled for, wasted? The room feels stifling, musty with the scent of old paper and furniture polish. Sunlight cuts across the desk in sharp lines, highlighting the envelope as if it were a stage prop waiting for revelation. My fingers curl around the paper, feeling its texture like a key to betrayal. Shadows lengthen in the corners, crawling along the walls and mirroring the dark realization settling in my gut. The faint buzz of the ceiling fan feels deafening, amplifying every heartbeat and every thought of their deception. Even the bracelet on my wrist, once a token of love, now a symbol of my obscured potential, presses against my skin, heavy with irony. It reminds me that every small token, every memory they used to appear caring, is now tainted by their hidden intentions. My vision blurs as I read the details. They never wanted me to succeed. The night my sister sparkled in gold, I watched from the shadows. The ballroom gleamed like a golden cage. Chandeliers hung heavy, reflecting every polished surface, while the scent of roses and expensive perfume clung to the air. I moved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne and sparkling water, my hands steady, my face neutral, a ghost among the glittering guests. Every laugh, every compliment, every whispered admiration of my father's generosity stabbed me sharper than any knife. I had spent the day convincing myself I could endure this, pretending that I was invisible, that the gold shimmer on my sister's gown and the clinking of glasses were background noise. But each cheer for her, each "she looks radiant" made my chest tighten. I forced a smile at a guest asking for another drink, nodding politely, while my mind spiraled with the memory of the scholarship letter. They had hidden my chance at success, yet tonight, they celebrated extravagance without a second thought. I replayed every injustice silently, the mockery at school awards, the ignored achievements, the constant dismissal of my dreams. The humiliation and betrayal had built a pressure inside me, a simmering heat I couldn't release yet. I reminded myself, patience, observation, strategy. Let them boast. Let them shine. One day, every mask would fall. A distant chuckle draws my attention. Dad, standing proudly by the buffet, patting my sister's fiancé on the back. "You know, we really made it affordable," he says, voice brimming with pride. The fiancé laughs politely, unaware of the venom in the words. "I'm sure you did a lot, sir. It's beautiful." Dad's smile falters for a split second, a nervous tick, almost imperceptible, before the charm returns. "Oh, I saved where I could. Cancelled a few unnecessary expenses. Like her exams, for instance. Smart investment, if you ask me." My hands freeze on the tray. My vision narrows. My stomach drops. They didn't just hide the scholarship, they had deliberately canceled my exam to cut costs. To them, my education was a line item, a number to manipulate, while my sister's luxury dazzled the room. I wanted to drop the tray and scream, but my feet were rooted, my mask flawless. The music swells, a slow waltz echoing across polished marble floors. The glasses in my hands vibrate slightly from the bass, a physical pulse matching the anger rising in me. The golden light casts long shadows, turning familiar faces into distorted specters. The faint smell of burnt candle wax from the centerpiece mixes with the perfume, suffocating in its richness. Every subtle movement, a flick of hair, a forced laugh, a slight tremor in Dad's hand becomes amplified. Clues to the hidden truths I now understand. I notice a small bracelet glinting under the spotlight on my sister's wrist, the same one she had insisted I wear for luck during exams. The irony twists inside me, a reminder of their selective care, of opportunities given or withheld at whim. My jaw tightens, the bitterness spreading through my veins like fire. Then, I hear Dad lean closer to my mother, whispering, "She'll never know. The exam cancellation saved us a fortune." I didn't faint, I just stopped believing in gravity. The bathroom door clicked shut behind me, sealing off the glittering nightmare outside. I leaned against the cold tile, knees trembling, stomach twisting like a storm inside. The muffled laughter and clinking glasses from the engagement party seeped through the walls. A cruel soundtrack to the collapse of everything I thought I knew about my family. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the sink. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, pale and unrecognizable, mascara streaked, eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and fury. They had celebrated my sister's engagement like it was the coronation of a queen, while my dreams, my education, and my dignity were dismissed as insignificant. The scholarship I had worked for, the exams I had prepared for, all erased to save a fraction of money. How could they treat me like a ledger entry, a number to be manipulated? I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but the weight of betrayal pinned me in place. My mind raced, bouncing between anger and grief, plotting revenge and questioning my own worth simultaneously. Every tick of the bathroom clock echoed like a reminder. I had been invisible to them, but invisible no longer. I muttered to myself, voice breaking, they'll pay for this." The faint sound of fireworks outside punctuated my words, mocking in their timing. I imagined Dad's smug smile, Mom's indifferent shrug, my sister's oblivious laughter, all stitched into a tapestry of betrayal that pressed down on my chest. "You think I don't see it?" I whispered again, as if the mirror could answer. "You think I'm weak? You'll see." Steam from the hot shower next to me fogged the mirror, mingling with my hot, salty tears. The porcelain sink was icy under my fingers, grounding me in a cold, cruel reality. Outside, bursts of fireworks lit the night sky, vibrant colors clashing with the darkness in my chest. Each crackle of light against the dark sky felt like a reminder of the celebration I was barred from, every pop resonating like a slap against my own helplessness. The smell of soap, bleach, and lingering perfume from the party hovered in the room, nauseating and suffocating, even in isolation. I felt the weight of their indifference crushing me. The bracelet my sister had worn, the one they had given me for luck during exams, now sat on the countertop, a symbol of their selective care, mocking me silently. I picked it up, fingers trembling, its cold metal biting into my skin, a reminder that they had always underestimated me. Through trembling lips, I whispered to the empty bathroom, "You'll remember this day." Sometimes running away isn't weakness, it's survival. I had never imagined my small bedroom would feel so suffocating. The walls closing in with every laugh, every clink of glasses, every faint echo of my sister's giddy excitement. I stuffed a small duffel bag with essentials, clothes, my laptop, the bracelet they had gifted me, now a bitter reminder, and paused, staring at the mirror. My reflection looked tired, hollow-eyed, but resolute. Leaving without a word felt unnatural, yet necessary. A quiet thrill mixed with fear twisted in my stomach. Every creak of the floorboards under my careful steps amplified my anxiety. Dad's steady light flickered in the distance. Mom's soft humming in the kitchen. They were asleep, blissfully unaware that I had decided to vanish from their carefully curated world. No confrontation, no pleading. I was done begging. Questions swirled. Where would I go? Could I trust anyone outside this family? My aunt's house had always been a safe haven, but could she handle the storm I carried within me? I forced myself to think practically, suppressing the swelling tide of anger. Survival came first. Revenge could wait. I whispered to the empty room, voice hoarse, "This isn't over." Not even close. The backpack on my shoulder shifted as I tiptoed toward the door. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I forced calm. Outside, the air was crisp, tinged with the scent of dew and distant jasmine. I took a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs, a quiet rebellion against the stifling suffocation of my home. The bus stop loomed a few blocks away, dimly lit and deserted at this hour. Each step felt like a heartbeat, each shadow a subtle warning. My mind raced with plans: long-term survival, temporary shelter, a base from which I could watch, learn, and wait. The symbolic weight of the bracelet in my bag reminded me, they thought they controlled me, but this was my move now. The street smelled faintly of wet asphalt, dew collecting on the edges of leaves, the world still wrapped in the soft hush of pre-dawn. Lights flickered in distant houses, some casting long, trembling shadows across the sidewalks. The cool air bit at my exposed wrists, the subtle tension of the night pressing against my senses. Every sound: a stray cat, a passing car, felt amplified, a reminder that freedom came with vigilance. At my aunt's house, the lights were warm, welcoming, soft against the harshness of my home. She opened the door silently, eyes already understanding, as if she had known the storm I carried before I even arrived. Her small, knowing smile was a contrast to the calculated smiles of my family. No judgment, only quiet acknowledgement of the pain I had endured. "Come in," she said gently. "You've been brave enough to get here." Her presence was grounding, yet her words carried weight. I unpacked in silence, each item placed carefully, ritualistically, a small declaration of independence. I sank into the couch, exhausted, yet for the first time in months, I felt air filling the space around me instead of walls closing in. Her soft, deliberate voice lingered in my ears as I stared at the window, watching the night fade into dawn. "If you want justice, build it." I had no degree, no support, and no family, but I had fury. I sat on the worn couch in my aunt's modest living room, staring at the small stack of bills and rejection letters beside me. Fury burned hotter than fear or despair. It was the only thing keeping me upright. Every door that slammed in my face, every scholarship I didn't get, every employer who turned me away because of my background added another layer to the armor I was building. I wasn't just surviving. I was sharpening myself. I reminded myself that survival alone wasn't enough. I needed tools, skills, knowledge, leverage. The laptop my aunt lent me became both weapon and shield. Nights blurred into code tutorials, online courses, and meticulous spreadsheets. I tracked every dollar I earned from tutoring, every hour invested in free online classes, every small progress note that screamed, I am not finished yet. Even the simplest wins felt like tiny victories against a family that had tried to erase me. The bracelet I had stolen from my old room, now carefully wrapped and tucked into my bag, was more than metal and beads. It was proof they had underestimated me. Every time I touched it, I imagined them laughing at their own misjudgment. Every penny saved, every skill mastered, every minor milestone became a whisper of revenge. I would rise while they remained blind to it. Slow and steady, I muttered to myself, voice rough, almost a growl. My aunt smiled quietly from the kitchen, wiping a plate, her voice calm but firm. Remember, anger is fuel, not fire. You burn too fast, and you leave nothing behind. I clenched my fist. I won't burn too fast. I'll make every move count, every rejection, every slight. It all goes into the plan. When a tutoring session ended, a small paycheck in my hand, I felt a mix of relief and bitter pride. 100 rupees here, 200 there. One day, it will be more than they ever imagined, I whispered, letting the thought solidify like steel in my mind. The sun poured weakly through dusty windows, illuminating floating motes of dust that danced in the still air. The faint smell of cooking lentils mingled with the sterile scent of my laptop's plastic keys. My fingers ached from typing, my eyes burned from hours of staring at tutorials, but the quiet of my aunt's home was a balm to my frayed nerves and a shield from the chaotic, toxic energy I had escaped. The hum of a distant ceiling fan was a steady heartbeat in the background, almost meditative, almost sinister, depending on how I focused. The outside world was cruel, but here, I was reclaiming control. Each step forward, applying to courses, learning coding languages, tutoring late into the night felt like planting flags on territory my family assumed I'd never reach. The rhythm of my life became methodical, almost ritualistic. Study, save, plan, survive. There was no room for self-pity. There was only the blueprint of my comeback. You're doing more than surviving, my aunt said one evening, as she placed a steaming cup of tea before me. You're building something real. I didn't smile, but my eyes gleamed with restrained satisfaction. I'm not done. I won't just succeed. I'll make them notice, even if it kills me to wait. Then came the moment that twisted my determination into something sharper. My phone buzzed. Social media notifications spilled across the screen. My sister's engagement photos were trending: lavish dresses, staged smiles, family captions, every frame dripping with privilege and carelessness. The juxtaposition was almost sickening. But instead of despair, a spark ignited in my chest. Ideas began forming, tentative and dangerous, weaving together everything I had endured, every skill I had honed, every penny I had saved. I stared at the glowing images on my phone, a slow, deliberate grin creeping onto my face. They think I'm gone, but I'm just getting started. Revenge doesn't always start with hate. Sometimes it starts with curiosity. Scrolling through my sister's engagement feed, I paused at the groom's smiling face, pristine, confident, untouchable. But my instincts screamed at me. Something was off. Curiosity dug its claws into my mind. I started digging. Google, corporate registries, news archives. The deeper I went, the more the groom's carefully constructed image crumbled. Rumors whispered online like smoke in a dark alley: lawsuits, shady business deals, scandals hidden behind layers of PR polish. Every headline, every obscure forum post, felt like a secret door swinging open. My pulse quickened. My father was clueless. My sister was blind to the cracks in the foundation she was willingly stepping onto. And I was suddenly armed with knowledge they didn't have, moral lines blurred. Part of me hesitated. Was I being petty? Was this vengeance, or simple caution? But the thought of my family's ignorance gnawed at me. My fury, once raw and unpolished, was now sharpening into strategy. Each discovery fed the plan forming silently in my mind. If they were blind to it, I could control the narrative, not just for revenge, but to protect them, or manipulate them. Why are you staring at that screen like it's a crime scene? My aunt asked, peeking over my shoulder. Her voice was light, teasing, but her eyes were calculating. I didn't answer immediately. It's nothing, just curious. My tone was calm, almost casual, but my mind raced 1,000 steps ahead. You're smiling, she said, a note of suspicion creeping in. Curiosity or plotting? I forced a shrug, lips tight. Maybe both. Every article I opened, every screenshot I saved, carried a tension that made the hairs on my neck stand. Some posts hinted at legal disputes, others at unexplained disappearances of minor investors. The groom's company, once a glittering faade, now looked like a house of cards. I could almost hear the echo of my sister's laughter when she first announced her engagement, blissfully unaware. The hum of my laptop filled the quiet room, a low mechanical drone that mirrored the rising rhythm of my heartbeat. The faint scent of old paper from my aunt's bookshelves mingled with the sharper tang of ink from my notebooks. I traced each line of text with my fingers, as if touch could extract more truth. Outside, the street was silent, the heat of the afternoon sun spilling into the room, wrapping the shadows of the blinds across my desk like prison bars. Confinement and revelation at once. Even the symbolic bracelet in my bag felt heavier today, a talisman of underestimated potential. It pressed against my palm like a reminder. Knowledge is power, patience is weapon, and revenge is an art of precision. Every detail mattered. Every misstep could alert the groom, my sister, or my father. I had to move with deliberate care, weaving secrecy into the simplest actions. I think I need to check something. Very carefully, I whispered to myself, barely audible. The laptop screen glowed, reflecting a shadowed version of me, not the powerless child they had dismissed, but someone poised, calculating, dangerous in subtlety. As I copied the first incriminating document to a secure folder, a slow grin spread across my face. They think I'm still helpless. But now, I hold the truth in my hands. 3 years later, I walked into my old house like a stranger with a secret. The familiar creak of the front door made my chest tighten for a second. Memories folding over me like a heavy, invisible blanket. Everything smelled the same. Polished old wood, a faint hint of my mother's jasmine perfume lingering in the air. My parents froze mid-step when they saw me, eyes widening with a mix of shock and polite surprise. They had expected time to erase my presence, my absence to soften their guilt. I let them think it had. My lips curved into a practiced smile, the kind that concealed a storm beneath calm waters. Inside, I was calculating. 3 years had changed me not just in looks, but in strategy, in patience, in understanding exactly how fragile their world was. Their wealth, their pride, their sense of control, all built on assumptions that I now held the key to dismantle. My sister. Oh, she looked the same, yet older, more tense, the lines of anxiety etched faintly on her forehead. Her marriage was teetering, her groom no longer untouchable. I could sense the cracks in their facade immediately. Their smiles were rehearsed, their laughter too loud, clashing against the unspoken tension that filled the room. And I was the shadow in plain sight, patient, silent, waiting for the right moment to let the pieces fall. "Is that really you?" my father asked, voice wavering, caught between relief and confusion. "Dad," I said softly, stepping forward, "it's been a long time, hasn't it?" My tone was warm, almost nostalgic, though every word was measured. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she reached for mine. We missed you," she said, eyes glistening, sincerity forced yet genuine. "I know," I murmured, letting the words hang, heavy with unspoken emotion. "I missed you too." Even as I spoke, my mind was racing. I noticed the subtle cues, my father's foot tapping against the floor, my mother's brief glance toward the living room, my sister's stiff posture, micro expressions that betrayed stress, fear, anticipation. They believed I had returned for reconciliation, for closure. Little did they know, I had returned to settle something far more consequential. The afternoon sunlight spilled through the curtains, dust motes dancing in slow motion, highlighting every imperfection of the house I once called mine. The faint smell of aged paper from old books mingled with the lingering scent of cooked spices from the kitchen. I ran my fingers along the banister, familiar textures, familiar creaks, yet it all felt alien, as if I was walking inside someone else's memory. The symbolic bracelet on my wrist, worn every day for the past 3 years, pressed lightly against my skin, a constant reminder of purpose and patience. Every corner of the house seemed alive, watching, measuring me. The air carried a low tension, subtle but persistent, like static electricity before a storm. My parents' forced smiles, my sister's anxious adjustments, even the hum of the refrigerator all painted a picture of fragile normalcy, a calm that could shatter with a single wrong move. "So, what brings you back after all this time?" my sister asked, tone curious but layered with defensiveness. "Oh, I said, tilting my head slightly, "just visiting, checking in, seeing how life has treated everyone." My voice was casual, almost playful, yet each word carried hidden weight. Her lips tightened, a flicker of unease passing through her eyes. "Well, you're always welcome here." They had no idea I'd come back to finish something, and this time, I wasn't leaving without taking it all. Revenge tastes better when it's served at the family table. I had spent weeks planning this dinner, every detail meticulously calculated. The house smelled faintly of roasted rosemary and garlic, a scent meant to lull them into comfort while I planted the seeds of chaos. I moved through the kitchen, adjusting the silverware, checking the crystal glasses for fingerprints. Small details mattered. My thoughts were a quiet storm: patience, timing, and precision. Every smile I practiced in the mirror, every polite word I rehearsed, was a mask concealing the fire beneath. The symbolic bracelet on my wrist glinted in the dim chandelier light, a reminder that the clock was ticking and the moment of reckoning was near. I imagined the expression on my sister's face when the truth hit: betrayal laid bare, consequences undeniable. My father, so proud, so rigid in his sense of control, would freeze. My mother, desperate to maintain harmony, would flounder. And the groom, oh, the groom I had invited, the one person he had wronged, the business partner he thought he could silence. They thought the past was buried. They were about to be unceremoniously reminded of how thin their walls of deception really were. I paused for a moment, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. It was eerily peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm I was about to unleash. I almost smiled. The irony was delicious. They had no idea that this simple act of hospitality was actually a carefully orchestrated trap. "Everything looks perfect," my mother said, smoothing her hands over her dress, eyes sparkling with naive pride. Her tone was warm, unguarded, exactly what I wanted. "Thank you, Mom," I replied softly, smiling as I placed the last fork beside the salad plate. "It feels good to be back, to reconnect." My voice carried sincerity, though every word was calculated. "Reconnect? Yes, it's been too long," my father added, his forced cheerfulness clashing subtly with the tension in his shoulders. I noticed his thumb tapping rhythmically against the table, a nervous tick he hadn't lost in all these years. I glanced toward the doorway. The groom had arrived. Unaware of the guest, I had slipped in his former business partner, the one he'd betrayed, the one whose company collapse had nearly ruined him. A tiny smile tugged at my lips as I imagined the shock when he recognized the man sitting just a few feet away. This was not just a dinner. It was a slow, deliberate unveiling, a masterclass in psychological suspense. The dining room shimmered. Under the chandelier, soft golden light bouncing off polished silverware and glass. The aroma of roasted meat mingled with the faint floral scent lingering from my mother's perfume. The soft clatter of dishes being arranged echoed slightly against the wooden floors, amplifying the stillness. Outside, a cold wind rattled the window pane, sending a subtle chill into the room, a reminder that something outside the surface was already shifting. The tablecloth, crisp and white, seemed almost symbolic, a canvas for the confrontation I had so carefully painted. I ran my hand along the back of a chair, feeling the smooth varnish, taking in the subtle creases in the fabric, familiar textures that now felt alien. Every tick of the grandfather clock marked the approach of the moment I had orchestrated. My pulse quickened, though I kept my expression perfectly calm. The subtle shadows cast by the chandelier mirrored the layers of deceit around the table. "To family then," my father said, raising his glass, voice loud with forced cheer. The same words he had used years ago, the same hollow toast he had made when ignoring my pleas. "To family," I echoed, glass in hand, eyes meeting his just long enough to let a flicker of unease pass. Inside, I savored the tension building, each heartbeat a drum signaling that the reveal was imminent. My sister murmured, "It feels good to have everyone together again," unaware of the storm gathering in plain sight. As forks clinked and wine glasses caught the light, I caught the faintest smirk on the groom's former partner's face. The truth was about to explode, and no one at the table was ready. When the first light cracked, the room went silent. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind countless times, but reality always felt sharper, more dangerous. The documents lay neatly before me, their crisp pages a silent weapon. My hand hovered, barely trembling, over the stack. Every eye at the table was oblivious, yet I could sense the tension building like a storm on the horizon. I breathed in slowly, trying to anchor myself in the calm before the unraveling. Inside, a swirl of satisfaction and apprehension collided. The betrayal had been so personal, years of manipulation, lies, and arrogance, and now the truth was finally within reach. My father's chest always puffed with pride, but I knew the pride was fragile. My mother's nervous glances suggested. She sensed the undercurrent, yet she had no idea the tide I was about to release. My sister, chatting lightly, was completely unaware that her world was about to fracture in real time. The symbolic bracelet on my wrist felt heavier, a subtle reminder that every move mattered. It was no longer just a trinket. It was a countdown to exposure, a marker of justice served cold. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from anticipation. The careful orchestration of chaos was nearly complete. So, I found something interesting. I began casually, sliding the first document across the polished oak table toward my sister. My voice was calm, deceptively so. She frowned. "What is this?" "Oh, just some paperwork. Nothing important," I said lightly, forcing a smile. "Unless someone here wants to clarify how these numbers add up." The groom's former partner leaned in, placing his own evidence subtly beside mine. "I thought you'd like the full picture," he said, eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. His tone was measured, almost mocking, yet polite, the perfect counterpoint to the storm brewing at the table. My sister's hand flew to her mouth, eyes widening. I don't understand." Her voice cracked, betraying confusion and horror. My father cleared his throat, forcing a laugh that landed awkwardly. Now. This isn't," his words trailed, broken by the sudden awareness in his gaze. I watched him, noting the micro-expressions, tight lips, flickering eyes, subtle clench of fists, pride crumbling silently. The chandelier cast sharp reflections across the glassware, catching the sheen of sweat forming on my father's forehead. The scent of roasted meat suddenly felt cloying, heavy, almost oppressive. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, amplifying the cold that seemed to seep into the room. The soft click of cameras recording every moment underscored the gravity, a quiet witness to the family's unraveling. Even the polished silverware reflected tiny, distorted images of shock and disbelief. I could feel the air thicken with tension. The faint smell of my mother's perfume clashed with the iron-like scent of fear now saturating the room. Every movement, a fork trembling, a napkin folded too tightly, a hesitant glance became magnified. Silence pressed against us all, amplifying the weight of truth. "My God, is this real?" my sister whispered, voice trembling, eyes darting between documents and the groom. "Completely," the partner replied smoothly, tone almost taunting, letting the truth settle like cold stone. The groom opened his mouth, stammering, but words failed him. His carefully constructed mask of confidence cracked in microseconds, each second stretching into eternity. My father slammed a hand against the table, shattering silverware with the impact. "How dare you humiliate this family?" he bellowed, his voice a mixture of fury and disbelief. The force of his anger ricocheted through the room, but I barely flinched. I had anticipated it. Every flicker of emotion, every collapse of authority, was part of the choreography I had built so meticulously. As the cameras whirred softly, capturing every grimace, every tremor, and every faltering word, I realized the real storm hadn't even started, and the groom's partner just leaned in with a smirk that promised devastation. The man who once called me useless now begged me to fix his mess. The engagement, once polished and gleaming, disintegrated in front of everyone. I felt a strange mix of vindication and unease as whispers slithered through the room like venom. Every sideways glance from the guests, every lifted eyebrow, was a nail in the coffin of my father's pride. I wanted to savor the moment, but I couldn't ignore the subtle ache of familiarity, the way betrayal always left a shadow. No matter how deserved the revenge, I could feel my father's gaze drilling into me, heavy and accusatory, his chest rising and falling with the kind of anger that could crack walls. Yet beneath that fury, I saw panic, the panic of a man whose carefully built reputation was crumbling faster than he could repair it. His insults hung in the air, but I barely heard them. I was calculating, weighing every syllable before it could sting. Savoring the role reversal that had taken years to orchestrate, the symbolic bracelet on my wrist caught the light again, glinting like a silent witness. Once it had marked innocence, now it marked retribution, and I felt its weight like a compass, guiding me through the moral maze I had navigated for so long. "You've destroyed everything," my father shouted, voice cracking between rage and disbelief. His hands trembled ever so slightly, the micro expression of a man unmasked. "I didn't destroy anything," I said evenly, letting the words cut through the tension like a scalpel. "You did. Years ago, when you stole my future, humiliated me, and told me I'd never amount to anything." He laughed, bitter and hollow. "Do you think you're the hero here? You humiliated this family in front of everyone." I leaned forward, voice cold but controlled. "I revealed the truth. That's all. The rest is consequences. Something you should have considered before lying, manipulating, and stealing opportunities from your own child." My sister shrank back, muttering under her breath, while my mother's face twisted with quiet anguish. "This isn't who you are," she whispered, voice trembling. The chandeliers flickered as if uncertain, shadows dancing across the walls and reflecting fractured faces. The smell of perfume mingled with the heavy scent of fear and anger, creating a thick haze that pressed against my lungs. I could hear silverware clattering to the floor, the distant murmur of shocked guests blending with the pounding of my own pulse. The air was cooler now, almost sharp, slicing through the tension like a knife. Outside, the faint rumble of rain against the windows added a grim soundtrack, echoing the storm within the room. Every micro movement of my father clenched fists, tightened jaw, darting eyes, told me more than his words could. The symbolic bracelet seemed to hum softly against my skin, a reminder that timing and patience had turned the tables completely. "Do you even realize what you've done?" He spat, voice strained, leaning closer with fury and desperation. "I realize exactly what I've done," I replied, softer now, almost whispering. "I've exposed what you exposed in me years ago. If anyone destroyed the family, it was you, not me." He faltered, caught in the weight of history and shame, unable to argue. Guests murmured, gossip spreading like wildfire, their judgment sharpening every word. From the corner of the room, my mother's voice barely reached me, trembling with both fear and accusation. "You've become just like him." Her words hurt more than any slap. I froze, caught between the sting of my mother's accusation and the roar of my own thoughts. The words weren't just criticism, they were a mirror, reflecting a version of myself I had tried to bury, the timid girl who trembled at every raised voice, whose hands shook when speaking up, whose dreams were pawned off by those she trusted. For a moment, I felt that familiar cold knot in my stomach, that old fear that had fueled so many sleepless nights. Could I have gone too far? My mind raced, replaying each calculated move, each subtle manipulation I'd orchestrated over the past months. Revenge had been sweet, but had it transformed me into something unrecognizable? I glimpsed the reflection in the polished dining table, and there she was, my younger self, with trembling hands and wide, scared eyes. The juxtaposition was jarring, almost painful. Then, a flash came to me. The letter they had hidden years ago, the humiliation they orchestrated behind closed doors. The hunger I had felt not just for survival, but for recognition, for justice. That hunger hadn't disappeared. It had driven me here, to this exact moment, where I could choose not just revenge, but truth, the balance of consequence and clarity. "You've changed," my mother whispered, her voice tight, almost breaking. "I don't even know who you are anymore." I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. "I'm still me," I said softly, almost pleadingly, "but I'm the me you forced me to become." Her gaze softened briefly, tinged with sorrow, but suspicion lingered. "You've become just like him," she said again, shaking her head. "I don't want to be like him," I replied, voice steadying. "I only want balance. I only want what was stolen returned. And if that means exposing the truth, then so be it." In the corner, my father muttered under his breath, a mix of anger and disbelief. "You think this makes you stronger? It makes you dangerous." I met his eyes, calm and unwavering. "Dangerous? Maybe, but not cruel. Justice isn't cruelty, it's balance." The room seemed to contract around me, shadows stretching from the flickering chandelier, twisting across faces etched with fear, guilt, and disbelief. The air was heavy with the scent of spilled wine and faint perfume, tangling with the metallic hint of adrenaline coursing through me. Outside, rain rattled against the window, each drop punctuating the tension like a drumbeat. My hands rested on the edge of the polished table, cold and smooth beneath my fingertips, anchoring me in reality as memories and moral dilemmas swirled. Every subtle movement of my parents, my mother's trembling lip, my father's tapping fingers, the slight tremor in my sister's hand was amplified, feeding my awareness of the delicate balance of this confrontation. The symbolic bracelet on my wrist caught the chandelier light again, glinting like a compass, reminding me that every step I took could tip the scales in one direction or the other. "Do you think exposing us will heal anything?" my mother asked, voice fragile, almost pleading. "I don't expect healing," I answered, tone steady but soft. "I only expect truth. And sometimes that's the closest we get to balance." I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of history and consequence, and decided justice isn't cruelty. It's balance. Justice didn't need a courtroom, just the internet. I stared at the blinking cursor, my hands trembling over the keyboard, the weight of months of planning finally converging in this one act. Every secret they buried, every betrayal they glossed over, it was time for exposure. I felt a cold clarity wash over me, sharper than fear, sharper than anger. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance, about letting the truth breathe. While my father's carefully curated image cracked in real time, could I really go through with it? My thoughts flitted between doubt and determination, looping like a broken record. The recordings of board meetings, the emails showing diverted funds, the secret contracts, I had everything meticulously organized. Every small injustice I had endured as a child, every moment they dismissed me, fueled a quiet satisfaction that this time I held the power. I imagined the whispers, the sideways glances from neighbors, the office colleagues, finally seeing the man behind the polished suits. I paused, my reflection catching in the dark screen of the laptop. The girl who had once been silenced, ignored, and humiliated, now controlled the narrative. I felt a shiver of apprehension, but it was accompanied by a strange exhilaration. The adrenaline throbbed through me like a second heartbeat, heightening every sensory detail. The faint hum of my laptop fan, the subtle scent of rain seeping through the slightly cracked window, the distant honk of cars, echoing like judgment outside. My assistant's text popped up almost immediately. "Are you sure about this? Once it's out, there's no turning back." I typed back, fingers firm despite the tremor. "I'm sure. It's time people saw the truth. It's overdue." Later, my sister called, her voice sharp but wavering. "You're going to ruin everything. Do you realize what this means?" I leaned back, taking in the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. "I realize exactly what it means. People need to see who he really is." The files uploaded, and the first wave of reactions began almost immediately. Notifications pinged, their sharp electronic tones cutting through the quiet of the evening like tiny hammers. The local news outlets picked up the story within minutes. My father's misuse of funds became headline news. The neighbors, who once smiled politely while turning their gaze away, now whispered in small, accusing clusters, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and disgust. I could almost hear their murmurs threading through the walls of my old neighborhood, their judgment a soundtrack to my vindication. The apartment felt warmer than usual, though my skin prickled as if anticipating a storm. Shadows of the flickering streetlights played across the walls, and the rain outside streaked the window in distorted ribbons, reflecting the chaos I had unleashed. Every ping, every message notification, was a reminder of the power shift I had engineered. My father's secretary left a voicemail, voice tight with panic. "Sir, people are calling. The media. I don't know what to do." I didn't respond. I let the silence echo. My phone vibrated suddenly, slicing through my thoughts. One unknown number, one call. My heart thudded violently, a reminder that even as the public reckoning unfolded, the personal confrontation was inevitable. That night, my phone lit up with his call. I answered. For the first time, my father sounded human, afraid. I stared at the phone, frozen, my thumb hovering over the screen. His voice, the same one that had once barked orders, dismissed my achievements, and crushed my confidence, now trembled, fractured, almost unrecognizable. A strange mixture of shock and grim satisfaction surged through me. I could hear it, the fear, the guilt, the desperation, bleeding through every syllable. Part of me wanted to savor this moment, the universe finally balancing a long overdue score, but another part, quieter and sharper, whispered a warning. Compassion? A flicker of pity? I felt it briefly, confusing me, a painful reminder of the little girl who once wanted her father's approval. My mind raced, turning over the memory of the exam form he had ignored, the countless times he had dismissed my struggles while indulging my siblings' whims. That form, it symbolized years of neglect and injustice. And now, here he was, vulnerable, begging. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, the leather of my chair scratching against my thighs. I wanted to scream, to tell him all the things I had rehearsed in secret for months, but my mind froze in the sharp grip of moral conflict. Could I forgive him in this instant? Could I let the faint tremor in his voice soften years of betrayal? My heart thumped violently, echoing the ethical battlefield inside me. Please, please stop this. I'm ruined. My career, everything. I don't know what to do, he pleaded, voice breaking, a raw vulnerability I had never witnessed. I swallowed, resisting the urge to speak. You can't fix this, I imagined saying, but no words left my mouth. I'm sick. The doctor. I can't, his sobs cut off mid-sentence. A part of me recoiled at the sound, memories of his cold indifference flashing through my mind. I can't help you now, I thought, almost mechanically, as if my empathy had been replaced by years of accumulated anger. Please? I'm begging. His voice wavered, thin and fragile, a ghost of the man who had once controlled my entire world. The room felt stifling. The air pressed heavy on my chest. A faint smell of rain seeped through the cracked window, mingling with the metallic tang of fear that clung to my skin. I could hear the distant rumble of thunder, low and insistent, as if echoing the storm of emotions inside me. The phone vibrated lightly against my palm, a lifeline and a tether to this confrontation. Shadows of the evening flickered across the walls, reflecting my conflicted expression, elongating and twisting like the guilt and anger battling inside me. I felt the briefest flicker of pity, a small warmth that threatened to undo months of resolve. But then, I remembered the exam form, the silent rejections, the hidden dismissals that had shaped my childhood. My vision sharpened, and the tiny spark of softness extinguished instantly, replaced by an icy resolve. I was no longer a child waiting for approval. I was the architect of consequence. Every manipulation, every lie he had spun over the years now met its reckoning. Without a word, I hung up. The silence that followed pressed against my ears, heavy and absolute. A week later, I received a letter from him. It wasn't an apology, it was a curse. The envelope sat on my desk, heavy with dread. I could feel it pulsating, as though it contained not just paper, but the weight of every insult, every slight, every year I had endured in silence. My hands trembled as I slid it open. The smell of ink hit me first sharp, almost acidic, and I flinched instinctively. I didn't want to read it, but my curiosity, the primal urge to witness the final act of his pride, pushed me forward. The words crawled across the page, jagged and venomous. You've destroyed this family, he wrote, each stroke dripping with bitter certainty. No one will ever love you now. They'll remember only what you took from us. A shiver ran down my spine. Part of me burned with anger, the satisfaction of his acknowledgement, however twisted, flickering momentarily. Another part recoiled. His words were sharp, poisonous, meant to wound, and for a heartbeat, they did. Then I noticed it. Between the curses, the insults, the accusations, a crack in his armor. He admitted something that made my pulse thrum with quiet triumph. He had always feared I would outgrow them. That fear, buried in his callous handwriting, gave my rage purpose and my strategy validation. Every step I'd taken, every silent maneuver, every calculated restraint, it was all proof of a truth he could not contain, a truth he could never reverse. I paused, staring at the letter. The paper trembled slightly in my hand, but not from fear. My grip was iron. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan, each rotation slicing through the tension like a blade. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, dragging with it the faint smell of wet earth, grounding me in this final confrontation. I realized the letter was both weapon and confession, a combustible mix that demanded a response. I whispered aloud, almost to myself, "You really thought I'd stay small forever? That I'd never break free?" There was no answer, just the soft scratch of pen against paper as I traced the lines, memorizing every insult, every hidden confession. "You feared me," I muttered, letting the words taste sweet in my mouth. "You always did." The paper felt coarse under my fingers, almost alive with the venom of his words. I could smell the faint smoke of the incense I had left burning earlier, mingling with the acrid tang of anger and grief. Shadows shifted across the walls as the sun dipped lower, casting jagged light that mirrored the fractured state of our family. The room's temperature seemed to drop, a cold whisper of solitude wrapping around me like a cloak. Each breath I took tasted faintly of iron, as if the universe had turned my vengeance into something tangible, something I could hold. I knew what I had to do. The letter was proof, yes, but it was also poison. I couldn't let it linger, couldn't let his words sink roots into my mind or my soul. My fingers pinched the edges, and I lit the corner with the match from my desk drawer. As the paper curled and blackened, smoke spiraled into the air, carrying with it a strange mixture of closure and grief. I inhaled, letting it fill me, a final exhale for everything lost and reclaimed. The act was simple, almost mundane, but in that simplicity lay a profound victory. The smoke curled into the shadows, carrying away the letter, and yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that some part of him had burned with it, leaving behind a presence I might never fully escape. Freedom felt strange, like silence after years of noise. The weight of the past lingered, but for the first time in years, I felt it loosen. The classroom smelled faintly of chalk and dust, but to me, it was the scent of possibility. Every young girl who hesitated at the doorway reminded me of myself, hesitant, overlooked, underestimated. I had survived their ridicule, their petty rules, their dismissive glares, and now, I could shape a space where someone else wouldn't have to. Scholarships and hard-earned degrees weren't just pieces of paper, they were weapons of reclaiming stolen time, stolen respect. Every lecture I delivered, every small success my students celebrated, felt like tiny victories stitched together into a larger triumph. I kept thinking of my mother's face when she first saw me graduate, her forced pride mingled with lingering doubt. She had never said she was proud out loud, but her eyes betrayed her. I didn't need her words. I had built boundaries, fortresses of calm around my life, but peace was delicate. My thoughts often drifted to my sister, the one who had laughed at my struggles, who had grown fat on family approval, while I scraped for validation elsewhere. I had learned to let go, yet memories clawed at me like persistent shadows. The business, the school, my small circle of trustworthy friends, all of it was a buffer, a sanctuary from the chaos I had endured. One afternoon, my mother arrived quietly, a bag of sweets in her hands, her eyes red-rimmed. I wanted to see how you're doing," she said, voice trembling. I nodded, offering a polite smile, but my heart remained detached. "It's going well. The girls are learning fast." Her hands trembled as she placed the bag on the desk. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and I sensed both regret and longing behind her words. "For everything." I didn't answer immediately. Silence hung between us, heavy but not oppressive. For once, I let her cry without comment. Her tears were hers to release. They didn't absolve her, but they didn't touch the core of my newfound strength either. The classroom hummed with quiet energy, the faint scrape of chalk, the soft rustle of skirts, and the occasional cough echoing in the high-ceilinged room. Sunlight spilled across the floor in golden patches, warming the cool tiles beneath my feet. Outside, the wind carried the scent of wet earth from last night's rain, grounding me, reminding me that life could be gentle even after storms. I noticed a small bracelet on my wrist, a gift from one of the students. Its simplicity contrasted with the complexity of my past, a tangible reminder of trust earned rather than taken. Each day reinforced the truth I had clawed toward. Life could be shaped by choices, resilience, and quiet courage. I had once believed that love and recognition from my family were ultimate victories, but now each small triumph in the girls' smiles, each breakthrough in understanding, was more potent. My anger and grief were no longer shackles. They were catalysts that propelled me forward, distilled into purpose. And yet, even in this fragile peace, the world whispered that stories are never fully closed. My phone buzzed one evening, a notification flashing on the screen. I glanced down. My sister. No words accompanied the message at first, just a link, a single, cryptic image. My fingers hovered over the screen. I wanted to delete it, ignore it, let the past remain buried. But a part of me, a careful, calculating part I had honed over years, needed to see what shadow she still cast over my life. I tapped the link, and my stomach clenched. It was a challenge I hadn't anticipated, one that promised the past wasn't done with me yet. Some betrayals never end, they just change form. I stared at my phone, the message from my sister burning like a sudden flare in the night. The words felt almost surreal. heavy with the weight of memory and revelation. Dad had left her everything: houses, investments, bank accounts, but for me, only a single sealed envelope. My fingers trembled as I held it, the paper smooth, crisp, almost impossibly clean. Inside, nestled like a relic from a past life, was a copy of my old scholarship letter. I blinked, disbelieving, tracing the typed words with a hesitant finger. And then there was the note in Dad's handwriting. I kept it because I knew you'd earn your way without it. My throat tightened. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, whether to feel pride or bitterness. The man who had seemed absent, cold, and unreachable had quietly believed in me all along. A swirl of emotions rose like a tide, threatening to drown the careful control I had built over years of struggle. Anger at the past, sorrow for what I had lost, and a strange, almost foreign warmth all tangled together in a single, unbearable knot. I remembered nights spent praying for guidance, for opportunity, for some sign that my struggle mattered. And here it was, a silent acknowledgement from the man who had seemed indifferent, delivered in a way that only he could. I called my sister, my voice a mixture of disbelief and cautious curiosity. "Why tell me this now?" I asked, trying to steady my tone. Her laugh was soft, almost conspiratorial. "Because it's time you knew. And maybe because you always deserve to find out last." I swallowed, struggling to parse the meaning behind her words. "So, I didn't need to," she interrupted, voice low, carrying that familiar mix of mischief and reflection. "You were always going to succeed, with or without it. Dad knew it. I knew it. And maybe, in a twisted way, that's his final lesson." Her words echoed in my mind, and I realized that the revenge I had sought, the justice I had carved from years of pain, had led me to this moment. The irony was exquisite. My family's attempt to control, to humiliate, to sideline me, had only strengthened me. Now, even their gestures of subtle redemption were layered with complexity. Like forgiveness was not a surrender, but another form of triumph. I traced the envelope again, feeling the paper's texture, imagining the nights my younger self had spent dreaming of this validation. The scholarship, once a tangible stepping stone, had become a symbol, proof that I could thrive on my own terms, that no one could steal my ambition or determination. And Dad's final act, quiet but deliberate, was both an acknowledgement and a challenge. The room was still, suffused with the golden light of late afternoon. Dust motes floated lazily, catching the sun like tiny suspended stars. Outside, a faint breeze whispered through the curtains, carrying the smell of rain-soaked earth. I could hear the low hum of distant traffic, but it felt distant, irrelevant. Time had narrowed to the envelope, the note, and the subtle tremor in my hands. The bracelet on my wrist, the gift from one of my students, caught the light, its small, metallic gleam, reminding me that life moves forward, carrying both scars and triumphs. I spoke again, softly this time, almost to myself. "So, forgiveness is another kind of revenge then?" There was silence on the other end, and I imagined her smirking, just slightly, knowing the weight her words carried. "Maybe," she said finally. "Or maybe it's the only way to win completely." I closed my eyes, holding the envelope to my chest, and for the first time in years, I wondered if letting go, truly letting go, could be the ultimate form of power.